Hello, I'm here today with Andrea Zimmer, a Senior Environmental Project Manager, and the RDIC and myself would like to welcome her and thank her for joining us today. And she's just going to talk about her career and how she went from a small school in Milton, Saskatchewan, which is kind of halfway from between Outlook and Rosetown, and to the position she's at today. So I'll let you take it away, Andrea.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks. Yes, so my name's Andrea Zimmer. I'm a senior environmental project manager with WSP in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I've worked at the company since about 2012, and it's been through many different name changes. It started as AMAC, and then it was purchased a few times, different name changes and acquisitions, and it's now WSP. So I work in the Earth and Environment division of WSP. It's a large global company. It's an engineering-based firm. So we provide consulting services on all sorts of different areas: mining, engineering, transportation, water resources, and obviously a whole suite also of environmental services. So environmental consulting in general is providing a very wide range of services, environmental services, to a wide range of clients. So services that I would provide, or environmental consultants provide, is wildlife surveys, vegetation, wetlands services, fisheries, contaminated lands and soils, remediation, reclamation, environmental permitting, so the regulatory compliance and liaising with the government regulators to get permits that you need for a project to proceed, heritage resources, soils, environmental monitoring, and project management. So I've kind of done a wide range of those throughout the years. I started as a field biologist doing wildlife surveys, vegetation surveys, wetlands, and fisheries. And I still do a little bit of that, but as the years have gone on, I've shifted into more of a project management role where I am more so on the planning and coordinating and scheduling all of those things to happen, and not going out in the field myself as much. Um, so in my role currently as a senior environmental project manager, I manage environmental projects from the concept, like the first idea of the project, to completion. So that involves, coming up with writing proposals, which is basically writing out what work you're planning to do for the project, and assigning budgets for each task, managing environmental assessments and conducting environmental assessments, doing the applications for federal and provincial environmental permits and approvals. So that would include like Fisheries and Oceans Canada, DFO, getting permits for works in fish-bearing watercourses, and environmental permits from the Ministry of Environment in Saskatchewan, like an aquatic habitat protection permit, heritage resource approvals, and the list goes on. Biological field studies is something that I coordinate. So I would plan, based on a project, what types of biological surveys need to be done: fisheries, wildlife, bird surveys, plant surveys, and then also coordinate the environmental monitoring during construction, and then write the report for the final submission to the regulator or to the client. So WSP itself is one of the world's leading professional service firms. It's an enormous company. It was originally a Canadian company, and now we have 550 offices all over the world with over 67,000 employees across 40 countries. So we're the largest Canadian-owned engineering consultant firm, and we have in Canada alone, we have 12,000 staff. that's just a little bit about the company and about what I do. Um, as far as the skills and traits that you would need for a job like this, I would say you need to, in consulting at least, you do need to be a fast learner. It's very fast paced and it's constantly changing. So fast learner, confident communicators, not being afraid to ask questions. That's really key in consulting. You can't be afraid to, there's no dumb questions, just you have to be confident in your ability to communicate with peers and with clients and contractors. You have to be flexible and able to multitask. Things change on a dime. Plans change. A lot of it is weather based or contractor based, and things can change very quickly. So you have to be able to adapt. I would say you need self-motivation in order to, take initiative and also to get yourself involved in the types of projects that you want to work on, because we do work on a huge range of projects, and you kind of have to put yourself out there, reach out to different contacts within the company if you want to work on a specific type of project. If you really are interested in fisheries work, you need to be reaching out to people who do that type of work to get involved in it. And then you need to be able to collaborate with a team. You're always working with a team of specialists, biologists. You always have a team of biologists that you're working with, and you're also always coordinating with clients and regulators. So government regulators, you need to. I do have a good relationship with a lot of the regulators that I regularly reach out to. Also important is computer skills. So a lot of the work that I do at this point in my career is writing reports and proposals. So you do need to be a strong writer and have computer skills. You be able to use software and technology and basic, Microsoft Office and things like that, and doing technical writing. So the facility that I work in is mainly office based. This is an example of one of the WSP offices. This is the office in Stonebridge in Saskatoon, and every office looks a little bit different, but essentially, I do also work at home, so there is some flexibility. So the people who would work mainly in the office are project managers, technical support leads, so like experts in a certain field, like a wildlife expert would mainly work in the office and help coordinate and support field staff, and then the management, people managers. And then the best facility there is, in my opinion, is being in the field. And in the field just means out on a project site or a proposed project site, out in nature, essentially. So the people who work in the field are the biologists, the field biologists or technicians, environmental monitors, and then technical leads, the people who are out in the field leading the studies. We work in all sorts of different field conditions and places. In Saskatchewan, there's a lot of native prairie, working along roadside near agricultural fields, also up in the forest. And, we work all over the country. So there is opportunity to travel a lot. A lot of our field biologists do a lot of work in Alberta, in some of the oil fields in Alberta, a lot of work in Fort McMurray area, and on all sorts of conditions. We work year round. In the wintertime, we do different types of wildlife surveys, like track surveys, where you're looking for wildlife tracks and sign. And obviously then the bulk of our busy season is in the summertime when we can be doing veg surveys and bird surveys. But we do have work year round in the field. So there's all different types, as I mentioned, all different types of locations. I am lucky enough that I can work from home, and I have a lot of flexibility in where I work. So this is an example of me working at the rink when my kids were at hockey practice. So that is something that I appreciate. This is the hazards of working from home. And so this is an example of a road that I worked on and a bridge that we replaced. The work can take you to all sorts of different locations and in a lot of different surroundings as well. We do work around a lot of heavy equipment, especially during construction of a project. The type of equipment that I would use or that a biologist would use includes, well, in the main number one priority in consulting is safety. And so our safety PPE, which is personal protective equipment, is the number one piece of equipment that we need to make sure that we have before we're going out in the field. So that would include like a hard hat, steel-toed boots, hand protection, eye protection, high-vis vest to make sure you're visible out in the field. And then depending on the type of work you do, there may be other PPE that is required also. Like if you're in a boat, you'll obviously need to have a life jacket, and you need to have emergency rescue equipment nearby, and training on how to use all of that. We use a lot of field data sheets, so just pieces of paper to write down the information that we're collecting in the field. Or in recent years, we've shifted to iPad data collection, so you'll actually be taking a physical iPad out in the field to do your surveys and to collect your information. Biologists obviously use binoculars and spotting scopes for viewing birds and other wildlife that they would be surveying for. If you're doing plant surveys, you'll probably have a handy hand lens for viewing those tiny parts of the plant that you need to see for identifying the plant. We use audio recording units, ARUs, for recording. To make it a bit more efficient doing surveys, we've shifted towards ARUs for bird surveys. So it just essentially you set the recording and it records the species, and it will give an audio recording that you can view, and by viewing the audio recording, you can identify what species are there. So we use that for birds, bats, amphibians, anything that you can hear and has an identifiable recording mark. We also use game cameras as well for finding out what sorts of wildlife might be in a project area. You will need identification books for plants and birds and other wildlife tracks and things like that. Other equipment that we would use includes a turbidity meter, which reads the turbidity of water, YSI water quality meter, which will take like the dissolved oxygen and conductivity of water to find out, what the quality is, if fish can survive in this water or not. For fish salvages and surveys, we would use backpack electrofisher as something that we use quite a bit, and you need a training course to be able to operate an electrofisher. There's several different companies that offer those training courses, and all of our field biologists who do fish surveys would be trained in electrofishing. We often will also use all different types of fishing nets, minnow traps. I'm not sure if you're familiar with, seine nets and pike nets, dip nets. There's all different sorts of nets, and then we would also sometimes use a boat depending on the location that we're working in and the water body and how big the work area is. Um, so for myself in the work that I do, I spend a lot of time working at my home office. And so my equipment would include just my laptop essentially and a few extra screens. We do a lot of work on just Microsoft Office. So Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook is something that I use every day. We use Teams is also a communication tool that we use to just communicate between employees of WSP. Um, the truck is something that we would use every time we go out in the field, and maintaining safe driving practices is a huge priority. We have to do annual driver training with WSP, mostly an online course, but we do take defensive driving annually. And there are GIS units in the truck to track driving habits, make sure our people are safe, to know where people are, and just to ensure the safety of our staff. For an example, for the type of software that I would use, so I do environmental screenings of projects. So I would look up a project using this HabiSask tool is an example of one of the tools that I would use online to screen for environmental sensitivity. So it's an online database. It's accessible to anyone. You do need to have a username and password set up if you want certain types of information. But essentially you can search anywhere in Saskatchewan, and it will bring up different measures of environmental sensitivity. For example, like rare plants that have been located. These green dots are rare plants that have been located. The yellow circles, or the red circles would be wildlife species that have been identified that are species of conservation concern, so rare or endangered species in Saskatchewan. It would also show if there's a specific land designation, like Wildlife Habitat Protection Act land, if it's Crown land, or if it's First Nation land, things like that are all important when doing an environmental assessment. So the rewards of my occupation is that it's very interesting. There's all different types of projects and types of work that you can get involved in. It's challenging. It's always changing, dynamic. I would say that there is a lot of opportunity for travel, depending on your personal situation. If you're able to travel, I did more travel as a field biologist in Alberta and just in different areas of the province when I was younger, before I had kids. And so if you are able and willing to travel, there are lots of opportunities, even worldwide travel with so many different offices in different countries. If there is an opportunity that aligns with the type of work that you do, you can apply to go work in a foreign country. I know several people who have done that. I think it's a reward to be able to work outdoors, and I still try to get out a few times every season because I just enjoy working in the field and being outdoors. As I mentioned, there's a large variety of different projects that you can work on, and a huge variety of different disciplines that you can pursue. So you might come into environmental consulting not really knowing what area you want to specialize in, and especially in the early years when you're in the field, you can really get exposed to a lot of different types of work. So fisheries or plants or wetlands, and you will likely get to dabble in all of those early in your career. And then it's nice that you can really go down a path of your choosing, which area you'd like to specialize in. Or you might find that being in the field is not for you, but there's plenty of office-based opportunities as well, like doing GIS, specializing in GIS, producing figures using like ArcGIS and different um, maps, like creating maps for projects. There's all different types of areas that you can specialize in, and then it's really up to you how far you want to go down that line, or if maybe project management is more something that works for you. And then there's also people management that you can get into as well. So just like a wide variety of options, I would say, is one of the rewards or benefits of working in environmental consulting. There's also like the benefit of working in WSP with a worldwide company with so many different people is there are experts in so many different fields that you can learn from and reach out to. We're lucky that we have access to so many experts around the world. So there's, as I said, many different career paths, different opportunities for growth and development. The company will send you for specific trainings that align with the work that you're doing or the career path that you want to go down. You can apply for certain trainings, certificates, things like that. So supported in that way. I would say in consulting, there is also competitive pay and benefits. Okay, so the challenges of the occupation, the not such great stuff, that it is fast paced and demanding. It can lead to burnout, especially in the field, like folks who go in the field, depending on the season. It can be quite demanding being out in the field for weeks at a time, potentially, with maybe a day off here and there for downtime. But it can lead to burnout, I would say, especially if you are the type of person who isn't vocal about setting your boundaries. I would say that's important to in consulting is to set boundaries of what you are and are not able to do and when you are getting burnt out. Field work challenge, it can be challenging because, as I mentioned, we do work in all weather, in lots of rough conditions. There's logistic challenges. You know, sometimes you're taking a helicopter to a project site and the helicopter's down, or it's too windy to get to your site, and you have to kind of come up with alternatives on the fly. There's dangerous wildlife that you're working around. You know, we work up in the northern forest and there's bears. There is also danger when you're working on a project site where there's construction equipment around. We do work a lot around heavy road construction equipment, and that's something that we also need to make sure we have annual training on is safe working around heavy equipment. There can be constant travel if, especially as I mentioned, when you're in the field, you can be traveling most of the summer. Like some of my colleagues that I work with really aren't home much of the summer, and you know that's a challenge for sure. Exhaustion and then missing family and events when you're out in the field for long periods of time, that's certainly a challenge. And that's what became challenging for me, was that once I had kids, I was not able to be away in the field as much. And that's when I went down the project management route. And that's kind of how I ended up as a project manager, is that I was not willing to be away from my kids for weeks at a time. My work-life balance is really important to me. And so I talked to my manager about taking on more office-based work. And that just sort of led me down the path of project management, which has been a good fit for me. As a project manager, I manage the projects and can choose, you know, if I do want to go out in the field, I can choose the day and where I'm going to go. And it just works for me to be a little bit flexible. So another challenge is in consulting, there is pressure to always be busy and what's called billable or chargeable. In consulting, the company charges a client, for example, we'll say Sask Power or SaskTel, Sask Energy is some of our clients. They will charge for the hours that their staff are working on their projects. And so there is pressure to always be working on chargeable or billable work. So that would be work directly for a client. If you are not busy and chargeable, you will get people managers kind of hounding you to get some more work on your plate, and that can be annoying because we do have a slow season in the winter where we don't have as much field work going on, and it can be slower, and so that pressure can kind of creep up in the winter time to stay busy. Salary and benefits. So the salary range is wide. I would say an entry level salary is around 50,000 these days. And the top end of the salary, I really honestly couldn't even say. I think around 200,000 would be like an executive level. But because there are so many different opportunities and different levels of experts in the company and different levels of management, like the sky's the limit, I would say. There is a lot of opportunity. Benefits, we've gone through a few different benefit providers over the years. We're currently with Sun Life. And so there's different tiers, different options, depending on what works for you and how many benefits you need for your family. There's an option to opt out of benefits. For example, my husband has good benefits through his employment, and so we have good coverage already for the family. So I did choose to opt out because there are premiums for the different levels that you can pay to have better benefits, essentially. I know some of my colleagues, their kids are getting braces, and so they've amped up their tier in their benefits to cover the braces, things like that. We also have Flex Dollars, which is a nice option, where you have a certain number of dollars that you can allocate to either a health spending account or a lifestyle account, or you can purchase extra vacation time with that. So that's kind of nice, that you can sort of choose how those dollars are spent. The health spending account is for things like massage or dental or glasses, and the lifestyle is geared towards healthy living. So, but it could also include purchasing like an iPad or a bike or a gym membership is what I use it for. So that's kind of nice to have that flexibility. And then there's also the option to add on additional insurance like life insurance or critical illness insurance, things like that. We have for a pension, I mean, it's not a pension per se, it's RRSP contribution, and it's up to you how much percent of your salary you would like to allocate to the RRSP, and the employer will match up to 4%. So you can contribute more than 4% from your paycheck, but the company will only match up to 4% of your base salary. For vacation time, you would start at 3 weeks of vacation, and then it increases with certain milestones. Like, for example, I think it's 10 years, you get an extra week of vacation, and stat holidays are paid. And then for wellness days, that's like our sick days. I would say this is not the best, but the company does only offer 4 wellness days or sick days. However, you can, if you do not use them as sick days or wellness days, you can use them as vacation days. They're flexible. So I guess that's a benefit for someone who never gets sick or doesn't have kids, that you would get 4 extra days of vacation if you didn't need them for sick days. And then the typical work hours is really like Monday to Friday, 8 to 4:30. We have a 37.5-hour work week with WSP. You can have some flexibility in there if you choose to work 8 to 5 with an hour lunch break, or you can work 8 to 4 if you don't take a lunch break. You can also start earlier or work later, just depending. There is flexibility on what works for your schedule. I personally am part-time, so I work a reduced work week, which is really has worked well for my family over the years. So there is flexibility and the ability to just talk to your people manager to see what will work for you. So educational requirements. For high school requirements, I think it would be your bio 30, chem 30, math 30. I took a bachelor's degree in land use and environmental studies at the U of S. There's different routes that you can take. I don't even think the land use and environmental studies program exists at the U of S anymore. Not that I want to date myself too much, but bachelor's degree in biology, ecology, environmental science. There's diploma options, the integrated resource management diploma option is a great option at Sask Polytech or, for example, Lakeland College. In my experience, when I was going to university and early in my career, I found that the integrated resource management grads had a lot more practical fieldwork experience. I found that they did get a really well-rounded education, were more prepared for field work than I was going through the U of S. The U of S didn't have a robust field program when I was going through it. I don't know what it's like now. I haven't been in touch with many students that are in environmental science or biology recently. And I just found there wasn't as much opportunity to get out there and do the field work, do data collection, and do the surveys. I found that the integrated resource management grads had a lot more experience and were better prepared for working in the field. But there's different options you can go down for sure. So certifications or extra training that are applicable in environmental consulting. I have my professional biologist designation through the Alberta Society of Professional Biologists. Saskatchewan doesn't have a Society of Professional Biologists, so I'm certified through the Alberta Society. Some of my colleagues have their professional agrologist designation or project management professional, PMP. So there's many different courses that you can take for environmental professional development. There's lots of environmental monitoring courses, erosion and sediment control courses, which is important when you're doing environmental monitoring, electrofishing certification, and then there's all different kinds of plant and wildlife identification courses that are helpful. I wouldn't say that you need to take any of those in order to be hired. I think they're more like on-the-job training. The company has sent me for environmental monitoring training, erosion and sediment control training, and wildlife and plant ID training. So it's just like supplemental that you can take while you're working as you start to develop your interests and go down a certain specialization. Or if there's something, if you are, having trouble getting hired, I have talked to people who have taken certification courses just to kind of boost their resume and be a little bit more appealing to employers. So my journey, how I ended up here, as Kevin mentioned, I went to a small town school in Milden, Saskatchewan, which is near Rosetown. The school isn't open anymore. But so after high school, my plan was to go to vet college. I was going to be a vet. And So I applied to the U of S, got in right after high school, and started university. And in my first year of university, I had a biology professor who was rather inspiring to me. She spoke so passionately about environmental issues that it just kind of sparked an interest in environment and environmental science in me. And then also in my third year of university, I became interested in doing a year abroad. Some of my friends had done a year abroad studying in various countries. And so I kind of got interested in that and went to, I think it was some sort of fair at the university showcasing different options for study abroad. So I ended up choosing an Arctic biology field course in Norway. It's actually on Svalbard, which is an archipelago north of Norway. It's the most northern university center in the world. And I did a year of Arctic biology there. And working in the Arctic, you can imagine that environment is a very sensitive topic, and it's top of mind for researchers that were working at the university. The Arctic is one of the most sensitive ecosystems when it comes to global warming and climate change. And it just really confirmed my passion for working in the environmental field. And so I did that year abroad and changed my degree. I chose to do the land use and environmental science degree. So that's how I kind of ended up switching gears away from veterinary college and towards environmental science. After university, I got a summer field job working as a fish technician on a lake sturgeon conservation project on the Saskatchewan River. I would say that's still to this day one of my most favorite jobs that I've ever done was basically working on the Saskatchewan River every single day, surveying for lake sturgeon, finding out how they are using the habitat in the Saskatchewan River and tracking them. That was pretty amazing, spending every day out on the river for 6 months. And from there, I would say my career was very much guided by connections that I made in the workplace. So just, relationships that you build, you meet a certain person and they mention, oh, I heard that the fisheries branch in PA is looking to hire someone. So that's how I ended up getting a job with the fisheries branch at the Ministry of Environment after my summer field job was over on the Saskatchewan River. So packed up my things, moved to Prince Albert, and I worked in the fisheries branch there for about 6 months. And again, someone that I had met while working at the Ministry of Environment in PA mentioned the environmental assessment branch is hiring in Regina. I think this would be a good position for you, encouraged me to apply to that position. So I did, and I ended up getting a position at the environmental assessment branch at the Ministry of Environment in Regina. So packed up my things again and moved to Regina and worked there for a year. And then I was really looking, because I had, done my degree at the U of S and worked that summer field job, but then I took on two back-to-back, mainly office positions at the Ministry of Environment. I was really itching to get back in the field. And so that's why I made the choice to shift to work in environmental consulting. I applied for a field biologist position at what was then called AMEC. That was the company's name when I originally applied, and got the job and moved to Saskatoon. And the company has since been purchased and merged with various different companies. So the name has changed, but I've been with the same company since 2012. So it was AMEC Foster Wheeler and then Wood, and then it was purchased by WSP recently. So I've been in Saskatoon ever since. So I was very happy to make that switch and to get that field experience in my early years of my career. I think it's important to get that field experience if you are going to shift into a more project management role. It's it's good when project managers actually have the knowledge of the people and have experienced what the field staff are going through. And then as I got older, I mentioned I had kids. I needed to spend less time in the field, and that's when I shifted to project management and into this more senior role. I would say for opportunities, consulting companies, and there are many in Saskatchewan and Canada. WSP is just one of them. They're always open to hiring. They do have postings, but I would never be afraid to send in a resume. If you know someone, or just to pop in and drop off a resume, they're always looking for the right people for the right roles, especially if you have field experience. I would definitely reach out at any time. There's lots of chances for advancement, many different career paths, diverse experiences, travel, and you can switch specializations. If you've gone down a wildlife biology route and you are suddenly interested in something else, you can have the opportunity to switch specializations. So this occupation could lead to people management or executive leadership, or becoming a senior technical expert. You might become, a expert in caribou population assessment, or an environmental impact assessment specialist. And also I would say that a lot of people who work in consulting do get opportunities with clients. So if you work on a lot of projects with a certain client and they really like you, they might try and snatch you up. So a lot of consultants do end up going to industry to work for specific clients, or go to government. So there's different opportunities that can come up from having the experience that you gain with environmental consulting. So related occupations would be becoming an environmental regulator with a provincial or federal agency like DFO, Water Security Agency, Ministry of Environment, or Environment and Climate Change Canada, or becoming a private industry environmental specialist. Lots of private industry have specific environmental specialists, and that's something that would be similar. The work-life balance is something that's very important to me and my family. I made the choice after I had my son, Hudson. He's 10 now. I made the choice to go to part-time work, and I did that so that I could be home for my kids. I've been lucky enough that they accommodated my part-time schedule, and we didn't actually need to have daycare for the kids. One of us was always able to be home. That worked really well for us, luckily. I feel really blessed that the company accommodated that. Originally, I was nervous to ask to go to part-time. I didn't know if they would go for it, but I just figured the worst they can say is no, and I asked and they said yes. So that's been really wonderful for my family. I have flexible hours and can work from home or from the office. Most consulting companies are willing to provide some sort of job flexibility. I would say more so than government. In government, there is an expectation to be at the office from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. I'd say consulting is more flexible. And it just depends on your goals, your personality, your personal life. If your goals are to work in the field and get field experience, it is more demanding and less flexible. So it kind of just depends what your goals are and what you need. So yeah, that's the end. I'm happy to answer some questions if there are any.
Well, that's really interesting, Andrea. I enjoy these sessions because I learn so much more about jobs that you hear about this and whatnot, and you go, I don't really know what people do. You get it, you have
Right.
your own, in your own mind, you have it, and then you hear from the person, you kind of, oh, it's not quite what I thought. Maybe some things were. But I'm just going to make a couple comments on things first, and then I do have a couple questions I think students that do watch this in the future might be interested one of the comments is like you mentioned like how you networked yourself to kind of move to some different positions, and that's becoming such a common theme I hear in a lot of sessions. And I just want to comment that I'm glad you brought that up because sometimes you just pay attention to the people around you and form relationships, and that could, who knows where that leads to for other
Exactly.
opportunities. So
Hmm.
it's
That
interesting.
was instrumental in my career for sure. I would say all the changes that I made were just based on relationships and someone mentioning something and suggesting, making a suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, like, I'm glad you brought that up. So the path to project management. So where you're at now, like you kind of talked about that a little bit, but is there more a certain amount of training that it takes to be in project management? Like you have a degree, like the person that takes integrated resource management, or that type of diploma, would that be as easy a path or clear a path for them, or is that something that's more education required, do you think?
I wouldn't say more education required, but the company that I work for, WSP, does provide if you are um, wanting to become a project manager, they will send you, well, we have company specific project management training that you have to do to be a project manager with the company, but also then they will send you for your what's called a PMP, project management professional course, where there is some additional training, and then you write a test. I believe I haven't taken it yet, but some of my colleagues are going through that right now, and you do a course, and then there's an exam, and then you would be given your PMP designation. So I wouldn't think that. I think it would be something more like professional development that's provided by the company.
Now,
But I
those
do think
courses.
that there are PMP courses that you could take if that was something like privately that you could take prior to getting a job, I suppose,
And
if
you
you wanted.
mentioned something like this, that kind of course, or even some of those certification type courses, are they mostly online or while you're at work, or are they, you got to, they give you some time off of work to actually attend
I
classes?
think that they would be, depending on the type of course you're taking, the environmental monitoring and erosion and sediment control courses and different like wildlife and plant ID courses that I've taken are in person in the field. You're actually doing the training in the field. You'll be in a stream or out in a field identifying plants and things like that. But um, a lot of the training that we do, like the defensive driving and the safe work around heavy equipment and the project management, is online, and it would be during company time, typically, like during work hours.
Okay, good. And just another comment, I think you mentioned how you kind of shifted once you got into university, an inspiring
Mm-hmm.
professor,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and also then on top of that, that willing to go to that experience in Norway, which sounds totally awesome.
Yeah,
That kind of
it
shifted
was.
direction. That tended to shift direction for you somewhat then from what you originally went for. And I guess the comment is I think it's really good for students to hear that they mean, at 17 or 18, to have a goal is fine, but to be able to
Right.
shift that goal based on experience that you gain as you get more education is fine as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually had a hard time letting go of my goal to be a vet, because when you come out of high school and you say to people, they ask you, what are you going to do? What do you want to do? And you say something like, say, I want to be a vet. I actually had a hard time letting go of that and following my passion or my inspiration and doing something else, because you just feel like you've committed to it. But I think it's really important to realize that at that age, you don't have all the experience to know exactly what you want to do, and to be open to change, and that's okay to change your mind.
That's an important message, I think, in
Yeah.
education in general. And that's so tough because even for parents sometimes to go, well, what are they doing now? Are they going off on some wild goose chase somewhere else?
Yeah,
And where's this going to lead to, and
for
all that.
sure.
So
Yeah.
it's for the student and for the parent. I think it's okay. It's okay to
Right.
change. I just an interesting thing that this is a little bit to an aside thing. the tracking the driving habits. I'd never heard of that before. That
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's I didn't know that was a thing. Maybe that's a good thing. I've never had that.
It's a good thing.
So if
It is a good thing, but
you're a chronic
people have a hard
speeder,
time
they will
adjusting to that.
a chronic speeder. They'll call you in and say, "Slow down."
Oh, yes. And it'll tell them if you don't put on your seatbelt too.
Oh, really? So okay,
Yes.
yeah,
And
that's
actually, it's not in Canada yet, but in the States in WSP, they actually have cameras that will watch the driver for, distracted driving, things like that.
so no
It's
use.
kind of creepy, but
Yeah, it's kind of creepy. You can't get away with anything. All right, while you're in the truck.
I guess, safety, that is one thing that's number one with consulting is safety, and that's very important to them. So,
Yeah, no, and that's a good thing. I mean,
yeah.
I think this, it's becoming more prevalent in so many industries, the safety aspect. So, and
Hmm.
that's a good thing. Well, anyways, I don't have any more questions. Thank you so much. The class just cut out about 10 minutes ago, so
Okay.
they caught most of this, and
Okay.
I told them to join, and once it gets on the YouTube channel to watch the rest. So
Sure.
hopefully they will. So thank you so much, Andrea.
Great.
I'll
Yeah,
just
you're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.